Chapter 1. The resolution. Trent Davis woke to the sound of his alarm at 4:45 a.m., the same way he had for the past 5 years. The shrill beep was followed by the soft thud of two furry bodies leaping off the bed. Rebel and Princess, his ferrets, were already on the hunt for trouble or shiny objects. Trent groaned, swung his legs over the side, and rubbed his face. "Morning, you little thieves," he muttered, watching Rebel dart toward the closet like a furry missile. Princess followed, her tail puffed like a feather duster. Trent didn't even bother checking what they were after. He'd find out later when he discovered his missing cufflinks in their secret stash behind the shoe rack. By 5 a.m., Trent was at the gym, earbuds in, pounding out his usual routine. Bench press, squats, treadmill. Same playlist, same faces, same nods of acknowledgement from the guy with the dragon tattoo and the woman who always wore neon leggings. Predictable, comfortable, safe. At 9 a.m., he was at his desk in a beige cubicle, sipping coffee that tasted vaguely like cardboard. His inbox was a battlefield of memos and meeting invites. He typed, clicked, and scrolled through spreadsheets until his eyes blurred. At noon, he ate a turkey sandwich. At 6, he drove home, waved at Mrs. Callahan watering her azaleas, and unlocked the door to his 3-bedroom ranch. The house was still new enough to smell faintly of fresh paint. He'd bought it last year after years of apartment living, and it felt like a milestone, a sign that he was officially an adult. The garage was neat, the screened-in patio begged for summer barbecues, and the backyard was a blank canvas of grass. Perfect for something. He just hadn't figured out what. Tonight, though, as he tossed his gym bag in the corner and Rebel scurried past with what looked suspiciously like a keychain, Trent felt the itch. The need for something different. Something that wasn't a spreadsheet or a treadmill. He opened his laptop at the kitchen counter and typed, "Beginner gardening classes near me." The search results bloomed like wildflowers. Community centers, botanical gardens, even a plant parenthood workshop that made him snort into his coffee. But one listing caught his eye. Green Haven Gardening Club. Learn, grow, connect. 10 miles away. Saturday mornings. Casual, friendly, beginner-friendly. Trent clicked the link. The page was cheerful, dotted with photos of smiling people holding baskets of vegetables. There was a tagline, "Because life's better with dirt under your nails." He chuckled. "Why not?" he said aloud, startling Princess, who was halfway up the curtain like a tiny acrobat. He filled out the registration form, hit submit, and leaned back in his chair. Just like that, his New Year's resolution had teeth. Or roots, whatever gardening metaphors applied. As he closed the laptop, Rebel appeared with something shiny in his mouth, a quarter, maybe, and dashed toward the closet. Trent shook his head, grinning. "Fine," he said. "You keep the treasure. I'll go dig in the dirt." Chapter 2. First impressions. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp air that hinted at spring but still clung to winter's chill. Trent stood in front of his bathroom mirror, debating whether gardening required a specific dress code. Jeans? Too casual? Khakis? Too try-hard? He settled on dark jeans and a navy sweater, neutral, safe. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. This was about vegetables, not vanity. Rebel and Princess watched from the counter, their beady eyes gleaming with mischief. Rebel pawed at Trent's car keys like he was plotting a heist. "Don't even think about it," Trent warned, snatching the keys before they disappeared into the ferret abyss. "You two have enough loot." Princess yawned dramatically, as if to say, "You're boring. Bring us something shiny." By 9:15, Trent was pulling into the parking lot of Green Haven Gardening Club. The building was modest. A converted barn with cheerful green shutters and a sign painted with vines and flowers. A row of cars lined the gravel lot, and people milled about carrying tote bags and coffee cups. Trent took a deep breath, grabbed his notebook, and stepped inside. The interior smelled faintly of soil and something sweet, maybe lavender. Wooden tables were arranged in a semicircle, each topped with clay pots and seed packets. A chalkboard at the front read, "Welcome, gardeners. Today, soil basics." Trent scanned the room. There were about 15 people, ranging from retirees in floral aprons to a young couple whispering over a seed catalog. And then there was her. Harper Lane stood near the chalkboard, adjusting a tray of seedlings. She wore faded jeans, a green flannel shirt rolled to the elbows, and boots dusted with dirt. Her auburn hair was pulled into a messy bun, and a pencil was tucked behind her ear like a badge of honor. She looked competent, the kind of person who could coax life from a rock. "Hi there." Her voice was warm, carrying easily across the room. She turned, and Trent felt a jolt, like someone had plugged him into a socket. Her smile was quick, genuine, and aimed right at him. "First time." Yeah." Trent cleared his throat, hoping he didn't sound like a malfunctioning robot. "I'm Trent. Harper." She extended a hand, firm grip, no nonsense. "Welcome to the dirt party." Trent laughed, a little too loudly. "Sounds festive. Depends on your definition of fun." Her eyes sparkled with humor. "Grab a seat. We're starting in 5. Trent slid into a chair near the front, trying not to look like he was casing the joint for escape routes. Harper moved with easy confidence, chatting with members, cracking jokes about soil personalities and introverted seeds. The room buzzed with laughter. Trent felt his shoulders loosen. When Harper began the lesson, Trent was hooked, not just by her voice, but by the way she made dirt sound like magic. She talked about pH levels, drainage, and compost as if they were characters in a story. Trent scribbled notes furiously, though half of them were doodles of carrots wearing sunglasses. "Any questions?" Harper asked after explaining loam. Trent raised a hand before his brain caught up. Yeah. So, if you accidentally kill a plant, is that like a felony? Or just a misdemeanor?" The room chuckled. Harper grinned. "Depends on the plant. Tomatoes? Community service. Orchids? Hard time." Trent smiled, feeling the knot in his stomach unravel. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. After class, Harper handed out starter kits, small pots, soil, and a packet of lettuce seeds. "Homework," she said, her tone mock serious. "Plant these. Keep them alive. If they die, don't tell me. I can't handle that kind of heartbreak." Trent accepted his kit, their fingers brushing briefly. A spark zipped up his arm. He told himself it was static electricity. Sure, static. As he walked to his car, Rebel's antics flashed in his mind. He pictured the ferrets tunneling through the soil, scattering seeds like confetti. He sighed. This was going to be interesting. He glanced back at the barn. Harper was laughing with an older man, her head tilted, sunlight catching in her hair. Trent felt something shift, a quiet thrill, like the first green shoot breaking through the dirt. Maybe gardening wasn't just about vegetables after all. Chapter 3, Dirt and Disaster. By Sunday afternoon, Trent was standing in his backyard, staring at the patch of earth like it had personally insulted him. The grass was uneven, the soil looked suspiciously like concrete, and the wind had a smug chill that made his sweater feel inadequate. He set the starter kit on the patio table and rolled up his sleeves. "All right," he muttered. "How hard can this be? Dirt, seeds, water. Boom. Salad." Rebel and Princess were perched on the windowsill inside, their noses pressed against the glass like tiny, judgmental spectators. Trent could practically hear their thoughts. This is going to be good. He grabbed the trowel from the kit and knelt down, stabbing at the ground. The trowel bounced off the soil with a dull thunk. He tried again. Same result. It was like digging into a parking lot. "Seriously?" Trent grunted, putting his weight behind it. The trowel slipped, and he nearly face-planted into the grass. He sat back on his heels, glaring at the earth. "Okay, you win round one." He fetched a larger shovel from the garage because bigger tools meant bigger success, right? 10 minutes later, he was sweating, his jeans streaked with mud, and the shovel was stuck in the ground like Excalibur. Trent tugged. It didn't budge. He tugged harder. The shovel popped free, sending him sprawling backward into the starter kit. Soil exploded like confetti. The seed packet fluttered into the air and landed in his hair. "Perfect," Trent groaned, brushing dirt off his sweater. Just perfect. He was still sitting there, contemplating his life choices, when a voice called from the fence. "Looks like you're wrestling the earth itself." Trent turned. Harper stood on the other side, leaning casually against the wooden slats. She wore a denim jacket over her flannel, her cheeks pink from the cold. In her gloved hands was a basket of herbs, like she'd just stepped out of a magazine titled Effortless Gardening Goddess. Trent scrambled to his feet, trying to look less like a man who'd lost a fight with dirt. Hey. Yeah. Just bonding with nature." Harper's lips curved into a grin. "Nature seems to be winning. By a landslide," Trent admitted, brushing soil from his hair. "I think my yard is made of concrete." "Clay," Harper corrected, stepping closer to peer over the fence. "Most yards around here are heavy clay. Holds water like a sponge, but it's a nightmare for roots." "Great," Trent said. "So I basically bought a house on top of a brick." "Not a brick," Harper said, her tone teasing. "More like a stubborn loaf of bread." Trent laughed, the tension easing. "Any chance you know how to tame stubborn bread?" Harper tilted her head, considering. "You need compost, organic matter, something to loosen it up. I can bring you some next time I'm at the community garden." Trent blinked. "You'd do that?" "Sure." She shrugged, easy and unassuming. "We gardeners stick together. Besides, I can't let you commit lettuce homicide." Trent grinned. "Appreciate the intervention." Harper's gaze flicked to the ferrets in the window. Rebel was now dangling from the curtain like a furry chandelier. "Are those ferrets?" "Yep." Trent sighed. "Rebel and Princess. Professional thieves. If it's shiny, it's gone." Harper laughed. A warm, melodic sound that made Trent's chest tighten. "Sounds like trouble." "They are," Trent said, smiling despite himself. "But the good kind." Harper adjusted her basket. "Well, good luck with the dirt. I'll drop by with compost later this week." "Thanks," Trent said, watching her walk away, boots crunching on gravel. He felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation, like someone had just handed him a lifeline and a spark all at once. As Harper disappeared around the corner, Trent looked back at the yard. The shovel lay abandoned, the soil still defiant. He sighed. All right, stubborn bread, he muttered. Round 2 coming soon. Inside, Rebel and Princess vanished from the window. Trent had a sinking feeling his car keys were about to join the growing treasure hoard in the closet. Chapter 4: The Ferret Heist. By Thursday evening, Trent had managed to clear a modest patch of soil in his backyard. It wasn't perfect, more like a scar in the lawn, but it was progress. He'd even bought a pair of gardening gloves, which Rebel promptly tried to drag under the couch. Trent rescued them with a stern lecture that the ferret ignored completely. He was rinsing dirt off his hands when his phone buzzed. A text from Harper. Got that compost for you. Mind if I swing by? Trent stared at the screen, his pulse doing a little tap dance. Harper. At his house. He typed back. Sure. Anytime. Then immediately regretted the lack of punctuation. Did that sound too eager? Too casual? He tossed the phone aside and began a frantic sweep of the living room. Shoes under the coffee table. Laundry basket in the hallway. Ferret toys scattered like landmines. Rebel and Princess watched him with gleeful curiosity, as if sensing chaos was about to bloom. The doorbell rang 15 minutes later. Trent opened it to find Harper standing there, cheeks flushed from the cold, a burlap sack slung over one shoulder like Santa Claus for gardeners. Delivery, she said with a grin. Premium compost, straight from the community pile. Trent stepped aside. Come in. Thanks for doing this. Harper entered, her boots leaving faint smudges on the mat. She glanced around, taking in the tidy but lived-in space. Nice place, she said. Love the screened patio. Thanks, Trent replied, trying to sound casual while his brain screamed. She likes the patio. That's practically flirting, right? Before he could offer coffee, a streak of fur shot across the floor. Rebel, moving at warp speed, launched himself toward Harper's boots. In his mouth gleamed something metallic, Trent's keychain. Rebel. Trent lunged, but the ferret was already gone, disappearing down the hallway like a furry bandit. Harper blinked. Was that? Yep, Trent said grimly. The thief strikes again. As if on cue, Princess bounded after her partner in crime, tail high, eyes sparkling with mischief. Harper laughed, the sound bright and unrestrained. They're adorable. They're terrorists, Trent muttered, sprinting toward the bedroom. Hang on. I'll be right back. He found Rebel halfway inside the closet, keychain clamped in his teeth, Princess guarding the entrance like a tiny sentry. Trent reached in, but Rebel darted deeper into the shadows. Trent groaned. Seriously? You're doing this now? Behind him, Harper's voice floated in, amused. Need backup. Trent turned to see her leaning in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes dancing with humor. Only if you're trained in ferret negotiations. I'm great with stubborn creatures, Harper said, stepping closer. Plants, people, maybe ferrets. Together, they crouched at the closet, peering into the dim recesses. Harper spotted the stash first, a glittering pile of loot behind the shoe rack. Coins, buttons, a watch Trent thought he'd lost months ago. And now, his keychain. Wow, Harper whispered. They've got a whole treasure hoard. Like tiny pirates, Trent said. Minus the eye patches. Harper laughed, reaching in slowly. Rebel eyed her hand, then, miraculously, dropped the keychain and scurried off, as if surrendering to her charm. Harper retrieved the keys and held them up triumphantly. Victory, Trent exhaled. You might be a ferret whisperer. Or maybe they just like me, Harper teased, handing him the keys. Her fingers brushed his, warm and steady. The contact lingered for a heartbeat too long, sending a spark through Trent's chest. He cleared his throat, trying to sound normal. Thanks. Seriously. No problem. Harper straightened, her smile softening. Now, where do you want this compost? They headed to the backyard, Rebel and Princess trailing behind like furry shadows. Harper knelt by the patch of soil, loosening the burlap sack. Rich, dark compost spilled out, earthy and fragrant. This, she said, patting the pile, is gold for your garden. Mix it in, and your stubborn bread becomes cake. Trent grinned. Cake sounds better than bread. Always, Harper agreed, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, the world narrowed to the two of them, the quiet hum of possibility hanging in the air. Then Rebel stole Harper's glove and bolted across the yard. Harper laughed so hard she nearly toppled over. Trent chased the ferret, shouting, Rebel, drop it. But Rebel only ran faster, the glove flapping like a victory flag. Harper wiped tears from her eyes, still laughing. You know, she said, I think gardening might be the least chaotic part of your life. Trent stopped mid-chase, grinning despite himself. You might be right. Chapter 5, Growing Closer. Saturday morning dawned bright and brisk, the kind of day that made Trent question why he'd agreed to leave his warm bed for manual labor. But Harper's text from the night before, community garden workday, you in, had left him no room for hesitation. He was in, completely irrationally in. The Green Haven community garden was tucked behind the barn, a sprawling patchwork of raised beds, trellises, and cheerful signs painted by kids. Trent parked his car and stepped out, clutching his gloves like a talisman. Rebel and Princess had tried to steal them twice before he left, but he'd managed to outwit them. Barely. Harper was already there, kneeling by a bed of kale, her hair escaping its bun in coppery wisps. She wore a faded hoodie and jeans, smudged with dirt, and looked like she belonged to this place in a way Trent never would. When she saw him, her face lit up with a smile that made his stomach flip. "Hey, rookie," she called. "Ready to get your hands dirty?" Trent grinned, walking over. "Define ready." Harper laughed, handing him a trowel. "We're planting spring greens today. Easy stuff. Even you can't mess this up." "Wow," Trent said, feigning offense. "That's a lot of faith." "Don't make me regret it," Harper teased, her eyes sparkling. They worked side by side, kneeling in the soil, the sun warming their backs. Harper explained spacing and depth, her voice patient and animated. Trent listened, trying to absorb every word while pretending he wasn't hyper-aware of how close she was. Every time her arm brushed his pulse jumped like a startled rabbit. "So," Harper said after a while, glancing at him, "what made you decide to start gardening?" "New Year's resolution." "Yeah," Trent admitted, pressing a seed into the soil. "Figured it was time to try something different. My life's predictable." "Predictable isn't bad," Harper said, smoothing the earth over her row. "But change is good too." Trent nodded. "What about you? How'd you get into this?" Harper smiled, her gaze drifting to the rows of plants. "My grandmother. She had this huge garden when I was a kid. I'd spend summers with her, learning how to grow things. After she passed, I kept at it. Feels like keeping a piece of her alive." Trent felt a pang of admiration, and something softer, deeper. "That's really nice." Harper shrugged, her smile tinged with nostalgia. "It's more than nice. It's grounding. When everything else feels chaotic, plants remind you that growth takes time." Trent thought about his own life, the spreadsheets, the gym routine, the ferrets plotting jewel heists. Maybe he needed that reminder too. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the rhythm of planting oddly soothing. Around them, other members chatted and laughed, but Trent barely noticed. His world had narrowed to Harper's voice, the curve of her smile, the way sunlight caught in her hair. When they finished their rows, Harper stood, brushing dirt from her jeans. "Not bad, rookie. You might survive this season." Trent grinned. "High praise." Harper tilted her head, studying him. "You're fun. You know that?" The words hit Trent like a warm breeze. He opened his mouth to respond. Something witty, something charming. But before he could, Derek appeared. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a grin that screamed, "I know I'm handsome." Derek sauntered over carrying a tray of seedlings. "Harper," he said smoothly. "Need a hand with those tomatoes?" Harper smiled politely. "Thanks, Derek. We're good here." Derek's gaze flicked to Trent, assessing, then back to Harper. "Well, if you change your mind." He walked off, leaving a faint trail of cologne and tension. Trent exhaled slowly, forcing a smile. "Friend of yours." "Club member," Harper said lightly, though her tone carried a hint of weariness. "He's enthusiastic." Trent chuckled. "I noticed." Harper grinned, shaking her head. "Come on, let's water these before they dry out." As they moved to the hose, Trent felt a flicker of something sharp and unexpected. Jealousy. He shoved it aside, focusing on the task, but the thought lingered like a weed. Derek wasn't just enthusiastic. He was interested. And Trent? Trent wasn't sure where he stood. Yet, Chapter 6, The Rival, Trent had never considered himself competitive. He wasn't the guy who turned board games into blood sport or argued over trivia night scores. But as he watched Derek laugh with Harper near the tomato beds, something primal stirred. A low hum of irritation that surprised him. Derek was all charm and confidence. Sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that looked like they'd been carved by a Renaissance sculptor. He leaned in close as Harper spoke, his grin flashing like a billboard for smugness. Trent tightened his grip on the watering can, imagining scenarios where Derek tripped over a hose and landed in the compost pile. Purely hypothetical, of course. "Hey, Trent." Harper's voice snapped him out of his mental sabotage. She waved him over, her smile bright and easy. "You want to help stake these beans?" "Sure," Trent said, forcing his legs to move. He set down the watering can and joined them, trying not to notice how Derek's hand lingered on the trellis Harper had just touched. "Harper says you're new to all this," Derek said, his tone friendly but with an edge Trent couldn't quite place. "Brave move. Gardening's not for the faint of heart." Trent smiled tightly. "Guess I like a challenge." Derek chuckled, the sound smooth as polished wood. "Well, if you need tips, I've been doing this for years. Harper can tell you. I'm practically the club's MVP." Harper rolled her eyes. "He's exaggerating. Derek just likes to brag about his tomatoes." "They're award-winning," Derek said, puffing up like a peacock. "Best in the county fair 3 years running." Trent bit back a retort about tomato beauty pageants. Instead, he focused on tying the beanstalks to the stakes, his fingers working faster than his thoughts. Harper crouched beside him, her shoulder brushing his arm, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the scent of her shampoo and the warmth of her presence. So, Trent, Harper said, glancing up, how's your patch coming along? Better, Trent said, smiling. Thanks to your compost rescue. Harper grinned. Glad to hear it. Derek cleared his throat, clearly unwilling to be sidelined. You know, Harper, I was thinking, maybe you and I could team up for the heirloom tomato project this season. Like old times. Harper hesitated, her smile polite but distant. I'll think about it. Trent felt the words lodge in his chest like a pebble. Old times. They had history. Great. Fantastic. The rest of the work session passed in a blur of soil and simmering tension. Derek cracked jokes, Harper laughed, though not as much as before. And Trent kept his head down, planting beans like his life depended on it. When the group finally wrapped up, Harper walked with Trent to the parking lot. Derek was still chatting with another member, his voice carrying like a trumpet. Sorry about Derek, Harper said, her tone light but tinged with amusement. He's persistent. Trent chuckled, shoving his hands in his pockets. I noticed. Harper smiled, her eyes warm. Don't let him scare you off. You're doing great. The words settled over Trent like sunlight breaking through clouds. He nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. Thanks. I'm not going anywhere. Harper's smile widened, and for a heartbeat, Trent felt like he'd won something. Not a trophy, not a ribbon, but something better, a chance. As she walked to her car, Trent watched her go, determination blooming in his chest like the first green shoot of spring. Derek might have history, but Trent had resolve. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Chapter 7, The Party. Trent stood in his kitchen, staring at the mountain of groceries on the counter like a general surveying his troops. Burgers, buns, chips, salsa. Enough soda to hydrate a small army. Hosting a backyard barbecue for the gardening club had seemed like a great idea when Harper suggested it. You've got that amazing patio, Trent. Perfect for a get-together. But now, with 2 hours to go, panic was setting in. Rebel and Princess were already in full sabotage mode. Rebel had stolen a shiny spatula and was dragging it toward the closet, while Princess gnawed on a bag of hamburger buns like a tiny, carb-loving gremlin. Guys, Trent groaned, rescuing the spatula. Please, just for one day, can we not turn this into a crime scene? The ferrets blinked at him, unrepentant. By 4 o'clock, the patio was ready, string lights glowing softly, chairs arranged around the grill, music humming from a Bluetooth speaker. Trent had even set out a little table with potted herbs for decoration, because apparently he was now the kind of guy who cared about ambience. The first guests arrived right on time. Mrs. Callahan from next door brought a tray of deviled eggs. A couple from the club carried a cooler of craft beer. Laughter and chatter filled the air, mingling with the scent of sizzling burgers. Trent moved among them, smiling, shaking hands, pretending he wasn't scanning the driveway every 5 seconds for Harper's car. When she finally appeared, Trent felt his pulse kick like a startled rabbit. Harper stepped through the gate wearing a sundress layered with a denim jacket, her hair loose around her shoulders. She carried a basket of fresh herbs and a smile that made Trent forget how to breathe. Wow, she said, looking around. This is amazing. Trent grinned, trying to sound casual. Thanks. I bribed the ferrets to behave. Harper laughed, setting the basket on the table. Did it work? Define work, Trent said as Rebel darted past with something shiny in his mouth. Harper laughed harder, and Trent decided that if chaos was the price of that sound, he'd pay it gladly. The party hit its stride quickly. Music, laughter, plates piled high. Harper moved easily among the guests, chatting, laughing, her presence like sunlight. Trent manned the grill, flipping burgers while sneaking glances at her every chance he got. Then Derek arrived. Of course he did. Tall, tan, wearing a polo that probably cost more than Trent's entire grocery haul. He strode in with a six-pack and a grin that screamed, I'm here to steal the spotlight. And maybe Harper. Trent. Derek clapped him on the back like they were old buddies. Great setup, man. Thanks, Trent said, forcing a smile. Grab a plate. Derek did and then made a beeline for Harper. Trent watched as Derek leaned in, laughing at something Harper said, his hand brushing her arm. Trent's jaw tightened. He flipped a burger so hard it nearly launched into orbit. Everything okay? Harper's voice startled him. She was suddenly beside him, her smile warm, her eyes curious. Yeah, Trent said quickly. Just focused on not burning dinner. Harper grinned. You're doing great. The words eased something in Trent's chest. He smiled back, and for a moment, the noise of the party faded. It was just her, standing close, sunlight catching in her hair, the scent of herbs clinging to her skin. Then Rebel struck. The ferret shot out from under the table, dragging Derek's car keys like a trophy. Derek yelped, lunging after him, but Rebel was fast, zigzagging across the patio, keys jingling like victory bells. Guests laughed, phones came out to record the chase, and Harper doubled over, tears streaming down her cheeks. Oh my God, she gasped between laughs. Your ferrets are legends. Trent groaned, diving after Rebel. Rebel, drop it. The ferret darted toward the screen door, Princess joining the fray like a furry accomplice. Derek stumbled, nearly knocking over the herb table, while Harper laughed so hard she had to lean against the grill. Finally, Trent cornered Rebel near the closet and retrieved the keys, emerging victorious and covered in dust. The patio erupted in applause. Harper clapped the loudest, her eyes shining. "You," she said, still laughing. "Throw the best parties." Trent grinned, breathless. All part of the plan. As the sun dipped low and string lights glowed brighter, Trent felt something shift. Harper was laughing beside him, her hand brushing his arm, and for the first time all day, Derek wasn't even a blip on his radar. Because in that moment, Trent realized something simple and undeniable. He didn't just want Harper to like his parties. He wanted her to like him. Chapter 8, Confessions and Complications. Trent had rehearsed the words a dozen times in his head. "Harper, I really like spending time with you. Simple. Honest. No grand gestures, no cheesy lines, just the truth." He'd planned to say it after the barbecue, maybe while walking her to her car under the glow of string lights. Perfect setting, perfect timing. Except Derek had lingered like a stubborn weed. By the time Harper left that night, Derek was still cracking jokes and offering to help her carry stuff. And Trent's moment evaporated like water on hot pavement. He told himself he'd try again soon. Maybe at the next club meeting. Maybe when they worked on the community garden together. Maybe when the universe stopped conspiring against him. Now, a week later, Trent stood in the community garden, clutching a tray of seedlings like a man about to propose to a tomato. Harper was across the plot, laughing with another member, her hair catching the sunlight in a way that made Trent's chest ache. Today was the day. No Derek in sight. No distractions. Just him, Harper, and a bunch of plants that didn't care about his love life. He waited until Harper finished her conversation and walked toward the compost bin. Trent followed, his heart thudding like a bass drum. "Hey," he said, his voice a little too bright. "Got a minute?" Harper turned, smiling. "Sure. What's up?" Trent swallowed hard. "Just say it." I wanted to tell you something." Her brows lifted, curious. "Okay." Before Trent could speak, a voice boomed across the garden. "Harper, there you are." Trent closed his eyes briefly. "Of course, Derek." He strode over, carrying a clipboard like it was a badge of authority. "We need to finalize the heirloom tomato project. I've got the sign-up sheet." Harper glanced at Trent, apologetic. "Can you give me a sec?" "Yeah," Trent said, forcing a smile that felt like cardboard. "No problem." He stepped back as Derek launched into a monologue about soil amendments and trellis designs. Harper listened politely, nodding, though Trent noticed the faint crease between her brows, the one that appeared when she was trying not to roll her eyes. Trent busied himself with the seedlings, planting them with mechanical precision while his thoughts churned. Every time he worked up the courage, Derek swooped in like a hawk circling prey. It was maddening. And worse, Trent couldn't shake the fear that maybe Harper didn't see him that way. Maybe she liked Derek's confidence, his easy charm, his award-winning tomatoes. By the time Derek finally wandered off, Trent's window had closed. Harper was checking her phone, her expression thoughtful. "Everything okay?" Trent asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," Harper said, slipping the phone into her pocket. "Just, busy week ahead." Trent nodded, his confession lodged in his throat like a stubborn seed. "Well, if you need help with anything, garden stuff, errands, just let me know." Harper smiled, warm and genuine. "Thanks, Trent. That means a lot." She walked back to the main plot, leaving Trent standing there with dirt on his hands and frustration simmering in his chest. He'd promised himself he wouldn't let this drag on forever. But if he didn't act soon, Derek might plant himself firmly in Harper's life, and Trent would be left on the sidelines, watching something beautiful bloom without him. As he packed up his tools, Rebel and Princess flashed through his mind. Tiny thieves who never hesitated to take what they wanted. Maybe he could learn something from them. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for the perfect moment and make one. Chapter 9, The Big Freeze. The text came late Tuesday night, just as Trent was settling in with a mug of tea and Rebel curled on his lap like a smug little king. "Harper, frost warning tonight. Temps dropping below freezing. We need to cover the garden or everything's toast." Trent stared at the screen, adrenaline kicking in. Frost? In April? He glanced at the clock. 9:47 p.m. He could ignore it, pretend someone else would handle it. But Harper's words, "we need to cover the garden," felt like a call to arms. He texted back, "On my way." 10 minutes later, Trent was in his truck, headlights slicing through the dark. He'd thrown on a hoodie and grabbed every old sheet and tarp he could find. Rebel had tried to climb into the laundry basket of supplies, but Trent managed to leave the ferret behind. Barely. The community garden was eerily quiet when he arrived, moonlight silvering the rows of plants. Harper was already there, her breath puffing in the cold, a flashlight clamped between her teeth as she wrestled with a tarp. She looked up when Trent jogged over, relief flashing in her eyes. "You came," she said, pulling the flashlight free. "Of course," Trent said, dropping the basket. "What do we do?" "Cover everything," Harper said briskly. "Sheets, tarps, anything to keep the frost off." They worked fast, moving down the rows, draping fabric over tender greens and fragile blossoms. The wind bit at their fingers, and Trent's breath fogged the air, but he barely noticed. Harper was beside him, her movements quick and sure, her hair escaping its braid in fiery strands. "Thanks for coming," she said as they secured a tarp over the tomato bed. "I didn't want to lose everything." "No problem," Trent said, tying a knot with numb fingers. "I'd hate to see all your hard work freeze." Harper smiled, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "Our hard work." The words warmed Trent more than his hoodie ever could. They finished the last row and stood back, surveying their makeshift frost armor. The garden looked like a patchwork quilt under the moonlight, eerie but oddly beautiful. "Think it'll hold?" Trent asked. "Should," Harper said, blowing on her hands. "We'll know in the morning." Trent hesitated, then shrugged off his hoodie and handed it to her. "Here. You're freezing." Harper blinked. "What about you?" "I'm fine," Trent lied, ignoring the goosebumps marching up his arms. Harper slipped into the hoodie, her smile soft. "Thanks." For a moment, they just stood there, the night quiet except for the rustle of tarps and the distant hum of traffic. Harper looked up at the stars, her breath shimmering in the cold. "You know," she said, her voice low, "I wasn't sure anyone would come." Trent met her gaze, steady and certain. "You can always count on me." Something flickered in her eyes, surprise, then something warmer, deeper. Trent felt the words he'd been holding for weeks rise like sap in spring. "I like you, more than I should." He opened his mouth, and Harper's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression tightening. "It's my sister. I need to take this." Trent nodded, swallowing the confession like a bitter pill. Harper stepped away, her voice soft as she answered the call. Trent stared at the frost-covered garden, frustration gnawing at him. Every time he tried, something got in the way: Derek, timing, life. But as Harper laughed faintly at something on the phone, Trent made himself a promise. Next time, no interruptions, no excuses. He was going to tell her. Because if tonight proved anything, it was that he didn't just care about the garden. He cared about her. Chapter 10: The Kiss Among Kale. Morning sunlight spilled across the community garden like liquid gold, melting away the frost's icy grip. Trent stood at the edge of the plot, breath held as Harper peeled back the first tarp. Beneath it, the lettuce was green and perky, untouched by the cold. "They made it," Harper said, grinning. "We saved them." Trent exhaled, relief washing over him. "Yes, we're heroes." "Garden heroes," Harper corrected, moving to the next bed. "Not as glamorous as comic books, but still counts." They worked together, uncovering row after row, laughter bubbling between them like warm water. The air was crisp, but the sun had bite now, and Trent felt the chill of last night fading, except for the knot in his chest. The words were still there, heavy and insistent. "Tell her now." When the last tarp was folded, Harper brushed dirt from her hands and looked around, satisfied. "Not bad for an emergency mission." Trent smiled, his heart thudding. "Harper." She turned, her eyes meeting his. The garden was quiet, just the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. Trent stepped closer, his pulse hammering like a drum. "I've been trying to say this for weeks," he began, voice low but steady. "I really like spending time with you, more than just gardening." Harper blinked, surprise flickering across her face, then softening into something warmer. "Trent," he swallowed hard. "I'm not great at this, but I had to tell you." For a moment, silence stretched between them, taut as a trellis wire. Then Harper smiled, a slow, luminous smile that made Trent's knees feel like clay. "I was starting to wonder if you'd ever say it," she murmured. Trent's breath caught. "You? I like you too," Harper said simply, her voice like sunlight breaking through clouds. Relief and joy surged through Trent so fast he almost laughed. Instead, he stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. She didn't pull away. Her fingers curled into his, warm and sure. And then, in the middle of the kale bed, with rows of green leaves nodding like silent witnesses, Trent kissed her. It wasn't dramatic, no sweeping music, no cinematic slow motion. Just a kiss that tasted of cold air and something sweet, something new. Harper's hand slid to his shoulder, steadying him, and Trent felt the world tilt. Not in chaos, but in perfect balance. When they broke apart, Harper's smile was mischievous. "You know," she said, "first kiss in a vegetable patch? That's a story." Trent grinned, breathless. "Best story I've ever been part of." Harper laughed softly, her forehead resting against his for a moment. "Come on, garden hero. Let's finish up before someone catches us making out with the kale." Trent chuckled, but inside, something bloomed, bright and unstoppable. For weeks, he'd been waiting for the right moment. Turns out, the right moment was here, in the dirt, with Harper's hand in his and the promise of something beautiful growing between them. Chapter 11: Ferret Redemption. Trent had never felt lighter. After weeks of second-guessing and missed chances, Harper's smile, and that kiss among the kale, played on repeat in his mind like his favorite song. He'd even caught himself humming while making coffee, which Rebel and Princess clearly interpreted as a sign of weakness. Because the moment Trent turned his back, they struck. It started with a glint. Trent was in the living room, scrolling through Harper's latest text, still smiling about yesterday. Smiley face. When Rebel darted past with something shiny dangling from his mouth, Trent frowned. Rebel, what is that? Princess followed, tail high, carrying what looked suspiciously like a folded piece of paper. Trent lunged, but the ferrets were already gone, streaking toward their lair in the closet like furry smugglers. Not today, Trent muttered, charging after them. The closet was a glittering crime scene. Buttons, coins, a watch, and now Harper's gardening glove from last week. But what caught Trent's eye was the paper Princess had dropped in her escape. He picked it up, smoothing the creases. It wasn't just paper. It was a note, handwritten in Harper's looping script. Don't forget, Saturday seed swap at the barn. And maybe coffee after? Smiley face. Trent stared, his heart doing somersaults. Coffee. After. With a smiley face. He grinned so hard his cheeks hurt. Princess, he said, holding up the note. You're officially forgiven. Rebel chittered from the shadows, clearly unimpressed with Trent's gratitude. But Trent didn't care. This wasn't just a reminder, it was an invitation. A chance to turn that kiss into something more. He texted Harper immediately. Seed swap sounds great. Coffee after sounds even better. Her reply came fast. Perfect. Looking forward to it. Trent dropped onto the couch, the note still in his hand. Rebel climbing onto his shoulder like a tiny pirate king. You know, Trent said, scratching the ferret's head. For a couple of thieves, you two might have just saved my love life. Princess bounded onto the armrest, her whiskers twitching like she agreed. Trent laughed, the sound echoing through the quiet house. For the first time in a long time, everything felt right. Messy, chaotic, unpredictable, but right. And as Rebel tried to steal his phone, Trent thought maybe Harper was wrong. Gardening isn't the least chaotic part of my life, but it might just be the best. Chapter 12, Blooming Love. Saturday morning was bright and breezy. The kind of day that made everything feel possible. Trent arrived at the barn early, Harper's note tucked safely in his pocket like a talisman. Rebel had tried to steal it again, but Trent wasn't about to let his ferrets derail destiny. The seed swap was in full swing when Harper walked in, carrying a basket of heirloom seeds and wearing a smile that made Trent forget how to breathe. She spotted him instantly, her eyes lighting up in a way that sent warmth flooding through his chest. Hey, garden hero, she teased, setting the basket on the table. Ready to trade? Only if you've got something good, Trent said, grinning. Harper held up a packet of rainbow carrots. These are magic. Trent laughed. Sold. They wandered the tables together, swapping seeds and stories, Harper's laughter weaving through the hum of conversation like music. Every time her hand brushed his, Trent felt that spark, the one that had started in the kale bed and refused to fade. When the swap wound down, Harper turned to him, her smile soft. Coffee? Trent's heart kicked like a startled rabbit. Absolutely. They found a cozy cafe nearby, sunlight streaming through the windows, the scent of roasted beans curling in the air. Harper ordered a lavender latte. Trent stuck with black coffee, because he needed something strong to steady his nerves. So, Harper said, stirring her drink, does this count as our first official date? Trent blinked, then grinned. I was hoping it did. Harper's smile widened. Good, because I've been waiting for you to ask. Trent laughed, relief and joy tangling in his chest. Guess I'm slower than I thought. Just cautious, Harper said, her tone warm. I like that. They talked for hours about gardens and childhood memories, favorite movies and ridiculous ferret stories. Harper laughed so hard at Rebel's spatula heist that people turned to stare, and Trent didn't care. He could have stayed there forever, sunlight pooling around them like a blessing. When they finally stepped outside, the air was cool, the sky streaked with pink. Harper slipped her hand into his, easy and natural, and Trent felt something settle inside him, a quiet certainty, like roots finding soil. Want to come by tomorrow? Harper asked as they reached her car. Help me start the tomato seedlings? Trent grinned. Wouldn't miss it. She leaned in, kissed him softly, quick, sweet, enough to make his pulse trip over itself. See you tomorrow, garden hero. As she drove away, Trent stood there grinning like an idiot, the world tilting in the best possible way. For weeks, he'd been chasing moments. Now they were blooming all around him. And for the first time in years, Trent Davis wasn't just living a routine. He was living a story. Chapter 13, Happily Ever After with dirt under their nails. Summer settled over the town like a warm quilt, and Trent's backyard had transformed from a patch of stubborn clay into a riot of green. Tomatoes climbed trellises, lettuce spilled from raised beds, and herbs perfumed the air with quiet confidence. It wasn't perfect. Some rows were crooked, and Rebel had tunneled through the basil more than once, but it was alive, thriving, just like Trent. He stood on the patio, flipping burgers on the grill while Harper arranged a platter of fresh vegetables on the table. Her hair was pulled back with a scarf patterned in tiny carrots, and she wore that easy smile that still made Trent feel like the luckiest man alive. Not bad for a rookie, Harper teased, surveying the garden beyond the screen. You've come a long way. Trent grinned, sliding a burger onto a bun. Couldn't have done it without my coach. Coach? Harper laughed, handing him a slice of tomato. Pretty sure you ignored half my advice. Creative interpretation, Trent said, biting into his burger. It's a skill. Harper shook her head, laughing. You're impossible. And yet, Trent said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. You keep showing up. Harper's smile softened. Wouldn't miss it. The patio buzzed with quiet life, ferrets darting under chairs, Rebel proudly dragging a shiny spoon toward his lair while Princess plotted her next heist. Trent had given up trying to stop them. Chaos was part of the charm now. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, Harper curled against Trent on the bench swing, her head resting on his shoulder. The garden stretched before them, lush and vibrant, a testament to patience, persistence, and a little bit of luck. You know, Harper murmured, her voice warm against his neck. I think you've found your rhythm. Trent smiled, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her hand. Yeah, took a while. Worth it, Harper said softly. Trent looked out at the rows of vegetables, the trellises, the herbs swaying in the breeze. He thought about the man he'd been at the start of the year, predictable, cautious, stuck in a loop of gym, work, home. And now his life was messy and loud and full of color, full of Harper, full of possibility. Definitely worth it, he said. Harper tilted her head, kissing him gently, and for a moment, everything else fell away. The ferrets, the grill, the world beyond the garden. It was just them, tangled in sunlight and laughter, with dirt under their nails and something beautiful blooming between them. And if Rebel chose that exact moment to steal Harper's scarf and sprint across the yard like a furry outlaw, well, Trent figured that was just life, perfectly imperfect, and better than he'd ever imagined.